The integration protocols of the Galactic Education Consortium had been clear from the beginning. All sentient species capable of interstellar travel would be granted equal access to the Central Academy systems. What the protocols had failed to anticipate was the psychological impact this would have on the youngest members of emerging civilizations, particularly those from worlds that had only recently achieved basic faster-than-light capabilities. Terra, or Sol, 3 as it was catalogued in the galactic databases, had been accepted into the consortium barely a decade before the events detailed in this document. The human delegation had arrived with their primitive chemical rockets and fusion drives, their representatives wide-eyed and eager to prove themselves worthy of galactic citizenship. The consortium, in its infinite wisdom and perhaps equal measure of condescension, had agreed to accept a limited number of human children into the prestigious Andromeda Prime Academy. The academy itself was a marvel of engineering, a station the size of a small moon that orbited the neutron star designated as the educational hub of the local galactic cluster. Students from over 300 different species attended classes there, from the crystalline Vextari who communicated through harmonic resonance to the gaseous nebula dancers who existed as sentient plasma clouds. The diversity was overwhelming, and for most species it represented the pinnacle of educational achievement. For humanity, it represented something else entirely, a chance to prove they belonged among the stars. Maya Chen Okafor was 7 years old when she first set foot on Andromeda Prime Academy. Her parents, both xenobiologists who had been selected for the first wave of human scientists to study alien life forms, had enrolled her with the highest hopes. She was small even by human standards, with dark eyes that seemed too large for her face and a quiet intensity that her teachers back on Earth had described as unnervingly intelligent. The Academy's orientation process was designed to be welcoming, but no amount of diplomatic protocol could hide the fundamental reality. Maya was different, and that difference was immediately apparent to everyone around her. While her Zephyrian classmates stood nearly 3 meters tall with their elegant, elongated limbs and translucent skin, Maya barely reached their knee joints. The crystalline students from Vexstar created beautiful musical harmonies just by existing, their bodies naturally resonating with frequencies that could solve complex mathematical equations. The young ethereals could phase in and out of solid matter at will, treating the physical laws of the universe as gentle suggestions rather than absolute rules. Maya could do none of these things. She was biological, carbon-based, fragile, and bound by the same gravitational and physical constraints that had trapped her species on their homeworld for millennia. More importantly, she was alone. The consortium had accepted only 12 human children into the Academy program, and they had been distributed across different stations and age groups to promote integration. Maya was the only human in her cohort. The mockery began almost immediately, though it started subtly. The other students didn't intend cruelty in the way humans understood it. Their cultures had no frame of reference for the deliberate infliction of emotional pain for social dominance. Instead, what Maya experienced was something perhaps more devastating. Genuine bewilderment at her limitations combined with a casual dismissal of her capabilities. During physical education classes, while her classmates effortlessly manipulated gravity fields, phased through solid obstacles, or simply flew using biological or technological adaptations, Maya struggled to complete even basic exercises in the Academy's Earth normal gravity simulation chambers. Her Aquarian classmate Tide Singer of the deeper currents could reshape her liquid form to flow through any opening, while Maya required breathing apparatus just to survive in the same environment. Why does the small flesh creature require so many artificial enhancements just to exist? Tide Singer had asked their instructor one day, her question rippling through the water medium with genuinely curious bioluminescent patterns. The question wasn't meant to be hurtful, but Maya felt the weight of it nonetheless. She was the small flesh creature. She was the one who required artificial enhancements. Environmental suits, breathing apparatus, gravity adjusters, electromagnetic shielding, just to survive in spaces where her classmates thrived naturally. The academic challenges were even more pronounced. The standard curriculum assumed certain baseline capabilities that humans simply didn't possess. Mathematical concepts were taught through direct quantum interface, allowing students to experience complex equations as multidimensional constructs that could be manipulated with thought alone. Maya's human brain, evolved for pattern recognition on a planetary surface, couldn't interface with the quantum matrices. She had to rely on primitive visual displays and manual calculation methods that her classmates watched with the same fascination they might show for a particularly clever insect. During one particularly memorable lesson on interdimensional geometry, Maya's instructor, a being of pure energy called Lumina, 9, had attempted to explain the concept of folded space by directly projecting the mathematics into the student's consciousness. Maya watched as her classmates' eyes lit up with understanding, literally, in the case of the photonic species, while she struggled to follow along using her paper notebook and physical writing implements. Perhaps the human offspring would benefit from remedial classes designed for pre-sentient species. Lumina 9 had suggested kindly, not realizing that the comment would follow Maya through the academy corridors for months afterward. Pre-sentient. That's how they saw her. A clever animal that had somehow learned to use tools and speak, but not truly intelligent in the way that mattered in galactic society. The social isolation was perhaps the most difficult aspect of Maya's experience. Her classmates weren't intentionally cruel, but their casual interactions revealed assumptions about intelligence, capability, and worth that cut deeper than any deliberate insult could have. They spoke around her rather than to her, discussed concepts they assumed she couldn't understand, and generally treated her as a curiosity rather than an equal. Lunch periods were particularly challenging. The Academy's nutritional systems could accommodate virtually any biological or energy-based dietary requirement, but the social aspect of eating remained important to most species. Maya would sit alone at tables designed for her size, eating food that had been molecularly reconstructed to provide proper human nutrition, while around her, her classmates engaged in complex social rituals that she could observe but never truly participate in. The hive spawn communicated through pheromone exchanges that created intricate social hierarchies during their feeding time. The ethereals shared memories directly by overlapping their consciousness during their energy absorption periods. Even the more solitary species had ways of connecting that went far beyond Maya's human capabilities. She could watch, she could try to understand, but she remained fundamentally outside these interactions. As weeks turned to months, Maya's initial enthusiasm began to fade. She had come to the academy with dreams of exploration, of learning about the universe and her place in it, of perhaps even contributing something meaningful to galactic society. Instead, she found herself constantly reminded of her limitations. Every lesson was a struggle, every social interaction a reminder of her difference, every day a challenge just to keep up with beings who seemed to exist on an entirely different level of reality. The other human children scattered across the academy system faced similar challenges, but they at least had occasional contact with each other through the communication networks. Maya, due to her age group and station assignment, had no such support structure. Her parents, when she could reach them through the interstellar communication delays, offered what comfort they could, but they were dealing with their own integration challenges in the adult scientific community. They understood her struggles intellectually, but they couldn't truly comprehend the daily reality of being the weakest, smallest, most limited being in every room she entered. The breaking point came during a group project on stellar engineering. The assignment was to design a theoretical method for extending the life of a dying star system, a problem that combined advanced physics, engineering, and resource management. Maya's team included some of the most capable students in her cohort: Quantum Weave, a crystalline being who could process calculations at near-light speed; Phase Dancer, an ethereal who could manipulate matter at the atomic level; and Void Singer, a member of a species that existed partially in folded space and could perceive dimensions beyond normal reality. Maya had spent weeks preparing for the project, reading everything the Academy's databases contained about stellar mechanics, energy manipulation, and large-scale engineering. She had developed what she believed was an innovative approach using cascading fusion reactions combined with magnetic field manipulation to essentially restart a star's nuclear processes. Her calculations were solid, her resource projections reasonable, and her presentation carefully prepared. When the time came to present their solution, however, her teammates had decided to go with Quantum Weave's proposal instead. It was elegant, efficient, and would extend the star's life by several billion years longer than Maya's approach. More importantly, it was a solution that made sense to the instructor and the other students, utilizing principles and technologies that were standard in galactic engineering. Maya's proposal, while technically sound, required technologies and approaches that were considered primitive by galactic standards. Her fusion cascade idea was dismissed as charmingly antiquated, and her resource calculations were critiqued for not taking into account the advanced materials and energy sources that were readily available to spacefaring civilizations. She had solved the problem, but she had solved it like a human, using human thinking and human limitations as her starting point. The presentation had gone well for her teammates. Quantum Weave's proposal was praised for its efficiency. phase dancer's atomic-level manipulations were deemed elegantly precise, and Voidsinger's multidimensional approach was called brilliantly innovative. When the instructor turned to Maya for her contribution, she had nothing to add that hadn't been covered more effectively by her teammates. Perhaps next time the human student could focus on data compilation and organization, the instructor had suggested kindly. Species with strong pattern recognition capabilities often excel in support roles. Support roles, data compilation and organization, pattern recognition capabilities. The words echoed in Maya's mind as she made her way back to her dormitory that evening. She wasn't seen as a potential scientist, engineer, or explorer. She was seen as a clever database, useful for sorting information that more capable beings could then use to create actual solutions. That night, alone in her small room with its carefully regulated atmosphere and gravity, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She activated her personal terminal and composed a message to her parents. Request immediate transfer to Human Educational Facility. Academy integration unsuccessful. Personal development incompatible with current environment. It was formal, clinical, and completely unlike the enthusiastic messages she had sent during her first weeks at the academy. But Maya had learned something important during her time among the stars. Sometimes the most powerful thing a being could do was acknowledge their limitations and choose a different path forward. What she didn't know, as she prepared to transmit that message, was that she was not alone in her dormitory. Something had been watching her, studying her, learning about her species and her struggles, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment of decision, when a human child would either surrender to perceived weakness or choose to transform that weakness into something else entirely. The message remained unsent as Maya fell asleep, her finger hovering over the transmission key. In the darkness of her room, her companion began to reveal itself, and the second part of her story began to unfold. Part 2. The revelation of strength. Maya woke to a sensation she had never experienced before. The feeling of being truly seen, not observed, not studied, not evaluated for her limitations, but seen in a way that acknowledged every aspect of her being without judgment or comparison. In the soft artificial dawn light of her dormitory room, she opened her eyes to find herself looking into the ancient, wise gaze of something that defied every category the galactic taxonomists had created. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple Earth cat, no larger than Maya's childhood pet Whiskers, whom she had left behind on Terra. Black fur with subtle patterns that seemed to shift in the light, bright green eyes that held an intelligence far too deep for any terrestrial animal, and the characteristic feline grace that had made cats beloved companions across human history. But as Maya sat up in her bed, fully awakening to this impossible presence, she began to notice the differences. The creature's fur didn't just shift in the light, it absorbed and redirected it in ways that created subtle camouflage effects. Its eyes held depths that reminded her of looking into deep space, with tiny points of light that moved like distant stars. And when it moved, there was something in its positioning and grace that suggested it was perfectly aware of gravitational fields, electromagnetic fluctuations, and spatial distortions in ways that no Earth animal could possibly be. "Hello, Maya," the creature said, its voice resonating directly in her mind with a warmth and clarity that made the quantum communication systems used by her classmates seem crude and harsh by comparison. "I've been waiting for you to be ready to meet me properly." Maya's first instinct was shock, followed quickly by the practical concern that she was either dreaming or experiencing some sort of psychological break from the stress of academy life. But as she reached out tentatively to touch the creature, her fingers encountered warm, solid fur and the gentle vibration of a purr that seemed to harmonize with frequencies she could feel in her bones. "You're real," she whispered, partly to convince herself, and partly because speaking aloud felt necessary to anchor this experience in reality. "I'm as real as you are," the creature replied, settling more comfortably on her bed. "Though real is a more complex concept than your species currently understands. My name is Umbral, though names are also more fluid than you've been taught. I am your companion, your partner, and perhaps most importantly, your teacher." Maya's scientific training, limited as it was by galactic standards, immediately began generating questions. But how? Humans don't have companions like this. We don't have any natural symbiotic relationships with sentient species. And you look like a cat from Earth, but you're obviously something else entirely. Umbral's purr took on an amused quality. "Your species does have companions like me, Maya. You always have." But you've been taught to see us as simple animals, as pets to be cared for rather than partners to be respected. We've allowed this misunderstanding because it served our purposes, and because humans weren't ready for the truth. But some humans, a very few, have always known what we really are. The implications of this revelation washed over Maya in waves. Every human cultural reference to cats being mysterious, to their almost supernatural awareness, to their ability to see things humans couldn't, all of it suddenly took on new meaning. You're saying that cats, real cats from Earth, are actually— "We are guardians," Umbral interrupted gently. "We are guides, teachers, and protectors who have chosen to link our fate with humanity's. We exist partially in your dimension and partially in what you might call folded space, though our understanding of dimensional mechanics is quite different from that of the ethereals or other phase-capable species you've encountered here." Maya's mind raced as she tried to process this information. But why? Why would an advanced species choose to pretend to be pets? Why would you hide your true nature? Umbral stood and padded closer to her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his small form. "Because we saw something in humanity that other species haven't recognized yet. We saw potential that goes far beyond your current technological or psionic capabilities. We saw a strength that doesn't announce itself, a resilience that grows under pressure, and an adaptability that could one day reshape the galaxy." "I don't feel strong," Maya said quietly, remembering the previous day's humiliation and her decision to transfer away from the academy. "I feel weak. I feel like I don't belong here, like I'm just a primitive creature trying to pretend I'm intelligent enough to survive in galactic society." "And that feeling," Umbral said with obvious satisfaction, "is exactly the source of your greatest strength. You see, Maya, every other species in this galaxy has evolved to their current capabilities in environments that rewarded those specific abilities. The ethereals developed phase shifting because their homeworld existed partially in folded space. The Zephyrians grew tall and elegant because their world had low gravity and abundant resources. The crystalline beings evolved harmonic communication because their planet had specific mineral compositions that made sound-based interaction optimal. Maya listened intently as Umbral continued. "But humans evolved on a world that was actively hostile to intelligence. Your planet tested you with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predators, diseases, and environmental changes that should have driven your species extinct dozens of times over. Instead of developing one overwhelming advantage like the other species, you developed the ability to adapt, to survive, to find ways to overcome challenges that should have been impossible." "But we're still limited," Maya protested. "We can't phase through matter, we can't communicate telepathically, we can't manipulate energy fields with our minds. We need technology for everything." Imbral's eyes seemed to sparkle with amusement. "Yes, you need technology. But what do you think technology is, Maya? It's intelligence made manifest in the physical world. It's the ability to look at a problem and create tools to solve it. Every other species in the galaxy has natural abilities that work within specific parameters. Humans have the ability to expand their parameters infinitely through applied intelligence." To demonstrate his point, Umbral did something that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. His form began to shift, not dramatically, but in ways that revealed the true extent of his nature. His fur seemed to absorb the room's artificial light completely, creating patches of absolute darkness that her eyes couldn't penetrate. His tail extended and became more flexible, revealing itself as a sophisticated sensory organ that was mapping the electromagnetic properties of everything in the room. Most remarkably, he seemed to become partially transparent, as if he was choosing how much of himself to manifest in her dimension. "This is my nature," he said calmly, "but it's also my limitation. I can manipulate local space-time, phase partially between dimensions, and perceive electromagnetic and quantum fluctuations directly. But I can only do these things. I cannot build a tool to extend these capabilities. I cannot teach another being to replicate them through technology. I cannot adapt them to solve problems they weren't evolved to address." Maya watched in fascination as he returned to his more familiar cat-like appearance. "But your species creates new solutions to every problem you encounter. You take your limitations and turn them into innovations. You couldn't fly naturally, so you built machines that could fly better than any winged creature. You couldn't survive in space, so you built ships and habitats that let you thrive in environments more hostile than any planet. You couldn't communicate across interstellar distances, So you built networks that connect entire star systems. The truth of what Umbral was saying began to sink in, but Maya still felt the weight of her daily experiences at the academy. Maybe humans in general can do that, but I can't. I'm just one child, and I can barely keep up with my classmates in basic subjects. I'm not some genius who's going to revolutionize technology. No, Umbral agreed, settling back down beside her. You're something much more important. You're a human who has been forced to understand your limitations intimately. You've experienced what it means to be the weakest being in every situation, to have to struggle for every small victory, to be dismissed and underestimated by everyone around you. And instead of breaking under that pressure, you've been growing stronger. Maya thought about her time at the academy, the daily challenges and humiliations, the constant reminders of everything she couldn't do. It doesn't feel like growing stronger. It feels like failing constantly. Because you're measuring yourself against beings who have never had to overcome fundamental limitations, Umbral replied. Your Zephyrian classmates have never had to struggle with basic physical tasks because their bodies are naturally adapted to their environment. Your crystalline classmates have never had to work to understand mathematical concepts because they can process them instinctively. They've never had to develop the kind of resilience and adaptability that you've been building every single day. To illustrate his point, Umbral projected something into Maya's mind. Not words or images, but pure understanding. She experienced a brief moment of seeing herself through his perception, and what she saw was startling. Where she saw failure and limitation, he saw a pattern of continuous adaptation and problem-solving. Every struggle with the quantum mathematics had forced her to develop new ways of thinking about complex problems. Every social challenge had taught her to read and understand beings whose psychology was completely alien to her own. Every physical limitation had made her more creative in finding alternative approaches to tasks that others took for granted. You've been conducting advanced Xenop psychology research without realizing it, Umbral continued. You understand your classmates better than they understand themselves because you've had to study them, to figure out how to communicate with them and work alongside them. You've developed technological solutions to problems that they don't even recognize as problems because their natural abilities make them invisible. Maya considered this perspective, thinking about her approach to the stellar engineering project. Her solution had been dismissed as primitive, but now she began to wonder if it had been dismissed for the wrong reasons. My fusion cascade proposal. It was different from what the others suggested, but it wasn't necessarily worse, was it? It was revolutionary, Umbral said with obvious pride. Quantum Weave's solution was elegant and efficient, but it relied on technologies and energy sources that are rare and expensive even by galactic standards. Your approach could be implemented by any civilization with basic fusion technology and magnetic field manipulation capabilities. Your solution could save dying star systems throughout the galaxy, including in regions where the advanced civilizations haven't bothered to establish presence. The realization hit Maya like a physical force. She hadn't failed to understand the problem. She had understood it differently. She had approached it from the perspective of a species that had to make do with limited resources, that had to find ways to accomplish impossible tasks with primitive tools. Her solution wasn't primitive, it was accessible. But why didn't anyone else see it that way? She asked. Because they don't think the way you think, Umbral replied. They've never had to solve problems with inadequate resources. They've never had to look at a situation and figure out how to accomplish something that should be impossible. They'd never had to be creative in the way that only comes from genuine necessity. Maya felt something shifting inside her, a change in how she saw herself and her place at the academy. The mockery and dismissal she had experienced began to look different through this new lens. Her classmates hadn't been cruel. They had been genuinely unable to understand the value of what she brought to their interactions. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others, she said quietly, remembering a phrase her grandfather had taught her years ago. She had never understood what it meant till this moment. Explain that thought, Umbral encouraged. Maya took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. I think it means that if you face your limitations honestly, if you acknowledge your weaknesses and work to overcome them or transform them into strengths, then other people can't use those same weaknesses against you. They can't break you with criticism or dismissal because you've already done the hard work of understanding yourself. And what does that mean for your time here at the academy? Maya considered the question seriously. Her first impulse was still to transfer away, to return to an environment where she could succeed more easily. But now she began to see another possibility. It means that I don't have to measure my success by the same standards my classmates use. It means that my struggles here aren't signs of failure. They're opportunities to develop capabilities that none of them have. Umbral's purr took on an approving quality.
And what capabilities are those? The ability to solve problems with limited resources. The ability to understand and work with beings who are fundamentally different from me.
The ability to find value and opportunity in situations where others see only obstacles. Maya paused, thinking about the implications of what she was saying. The ability to survive and thrive in environments that weren't designed for my species. Those are the capabilities that will serve humanity as your species expands into the galaxy, Umbral confirmed.
Every human colony will be established in environments that aren't naturally suited for your species.
Every diplomatic mission will require understanding beings whose psychology and capabilities are alien to human experience. Every technological challenge will require finding solutions that work with the resources and knowledge base that humans actually possess, rather than the theoretical optimal solutions. Maya felt a sense of purpose beginning to crystallize, different from her original dreams of galactic exploration, but perhaps more important. I'm not here just to learn about other species and technologies. I'm here to learn how to be human in a galactic context. Exactly. And that learning process requires you to experience what it means to be the weakest, most limited being in every room you enter. It requires you to develop strength that doesn't depend on natural advantages or technological superiority. It requires you to discover what humans can contribute to galactic civilization that no other species can. The morning chimes of the Academy's schedule system interrupted their conversation, reminding Maya that she had classes to attend. But for the first time since her arrival, she felt something approaching eagerness rather than dread at the prospect. "Will you come with me?" she asked Umbral. "I've been with you every day since you arrived," he replied. "You simply weren't ready to see me until now. But yes, from now on, you'll know I'm there." As Maya prepared for her day, she realized that everything had changed. Not her circumstances, not her classmates' attitudes, not the academic challenges she faced, but her understanding of what those challenges meant and what they were preparing her for had been completely transformed. The third part of her story was about to begin, and it would require all the strength she had developed through her struggles, combined with new understanding of what that strength could accomplish. Part 3. The emergence of true power. The change in Maya's approach became apparent immediately, though it manifested in ways that her classmates and instructors initially found puzzling rather than impressive. She began asking different questions in class, not the desperate inquiries of a student struggling to keep up, but probing examinations that seemed to come from an entirely different perspective. During a lesson on interstellar communication systems, while her classmates focused on the elegant mathematical principles that allowed for instantaneous quantum entanglement across galactic distances, Maya raised her hand with a question that made the instructor, a photonic being called radiance through prisms, pause in consideration. The quantum entanglement networks require both endpoints to be equipped with quantum resonance chambers that cost approximately 40 million galactic credits each, Maya said, having done research far beyond what was required for the basic lesson. What communication solutions exist for civilizations that can't afford that infrastructure, but still need to coordinate activities across multiple star systems? The question revealed something that the advanced species had never needed to consider. Their communication technologies were so far beyond the resource constraints that had shaped their development that they had never needed to think about alternatives. Radiance through prisms had to admit that no such alternatives existed in current galactic infrastructure. The assumption has always been that civilizations reach a certain technological threshold before expanding beyond their home systems, Radiance through prisms explained. By the time a species is ready for interstellar colonization, they have access to quantum communication technology. But that creates a barrier to expansion for species that are capable of interstellar travel but haven't developed quantum technologies, Maya replied. It means that only the wealthiest or most technologically advanced civilizations can maintain coherent expansion efforts. What about species that develop excellent spacecraft technology but take different paths in other areas? Umbral, invisible to everyone else but present at Maya's side, radiated approval. She was beginning to think like a human in the best sense, identifying problems that existed in the gaps between different approaches and capabilities. The conversation that followed was unlike anything that had occurred in that classroom before. Maya's classmates found themselves considering questions they had never thought to ask. While radiance through prisms realized that there were significant infrastructure gaps in galactic civilization that had been invisible to the advanced species because they had never needed to navigate those gaps themselves. Maya's suggested solution was characteristically human in its approach. Rather than trying to develop cheaper quantum entanglement technology, she proposed a hybrid system using tachyon burst transmission combined with distributed relay networks. It would be slower than quantum entanglement, but still faster than light-speed communication, and it could be implemented using technologies that were accessible to early interstellar civilizations. The relay networks could be established by the more advanced species as a form of infrastructure development, Maya explained, warming to her topic. Each relay point would be relatively inexpensive and could serve multiple developing civilizations. The network would pay for itself through usage fees and would accelerate the integration of new species into galactic society. What Maya had done was identify a market opportunity that hadn't existed in the thinking of the advanced species because they had never needed to consider resource constraints as a significant factor. Her human perspective, shaped by millennia of making do with inadequate resources, allowed her to see solutions that were invisible to beings whose evolution had never required that kind of adaptive problem-solving. The impact of this shift in Maya's approach extended beyond academic discussions. Her project groups began to function differently as her teammates realized that her contributions weren't signs of limitation, but insights from a completely different analytical framework. The stellar engineering project that had been such a source of frustration became an opportunity for collaboration that none of them had anticipated. Quantum Weave, the crystalline being whose mathematical processing abilities had initially intimidated Maya, found herself genuinely curious about the human approach to problem-solving. Your fusion cascade solution operates within much more constrained parameters than my quantum manipulation approach, she observed during one of their work sessions. But the constraints themselves seem to generate innovative applications that wouldn't occur within my optimization processes. Maya had learned to see this kind of comment not as condescension but as genuine scientific interest. Human engineering has always been about working within limitations, she explained. We've never had access to unlimited energy or exotic materials, so we've had to develop technologies that could accomplish complex tasks with relatively simple components.
But doesn't that make your technologies inferior? Phase Dancer asked, her ethereal form flickering with curiosity rather than dismissal.
Different, Maya corrected. My fusion cascade approach would take longer to implement and wouldn't extend the star's life as much as Quantum Weave's solution, but it could be deployed by a single star system using only the resources available within that system. Quantum Weave's approach requires a level of galactic infrastructure and cooperation that might not be available in emergency situations. Voidsinger, the being who existed partially in folded space, contributed an observation that surprised everyone. The human approach has redundancy characteristics that our solutions lack. If the advanced infrastructure required for our technologies becomes unavailable, our solutions become impossible to implement. The human approach would continue functioning even during periods of galactic instability. This observation led to a broader discussion about the assumptions built into galactic technology and infrastructure. The advanced species had developed their solutions during periods of stability and cooperation, with access to resources and technologies that represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement. They had never needed to consider what would happen if those conditions changed. Maya's human perspective, shaped by a species that had evolved during periods of constant environmental change and resource scarcity, naturally incorporated assumptions about instability and limitation that made her solutions more robust under adverse conditions. The group's final project presentation became something unprecedented in the Academy's history. Instead of presenting a single solution to the stellar engineering challenge, they presented a comprehensive approach that included multiple options designed for different circumstances and resource availability. Quantum Weave presented her original solution as the optimal approach for stable, well-resourced civilizations with access to advanced galactic infrastructure. Phase Dancer demonstrated how her atomic-level manipulations could be used to implement either approach more efficiently. Voidsinger showed how multidimensional perception could provide early warning systems for stellar instability that would give civilizations time to implement whatever solution their resources allowed. Maya presented her fusion cascade approach as the foundation solution that could be implemented by any civilization with basic interstellar capabilities, along with upgrade paths that could incorporate the more advanced techniques as resources and infrastructure became available. The presentation was received with something approaching awe by their instructor and the other students. They had created not just a solution to the stated problem, but a comprehensive framework that acknowledged the reality of galactic civilization's diversity in capabilities and resources. More importantly, they had demonstrated something that the advanced species had never seen before: the value of including limitations and constraints as design features rather than problems to be overcome. Maya's human perspective had revealed that what the other species saw as primitive approaches were actually sophisticated solutions to a different set of parameters. The success of this project marked a turning point in how Maya was perceived at the Academy. Her classmates began seeking her input on other challenges, not because they needed her to contribute raw capabilities that they lacked, but because they valued the insights that came from her fundamentally different approach to problem solving. Maya found herself becoming a translator between different ways of thinking about challenges. Her experiences struggling with the limitations of human capabilities had given her deep understanding of the assumptions and constraints that shaped different approaches to problem solving. She could help beings with vast natural advantages understand how their solutions would work for species without those advantages, and she could help identify opportunities for collaboration that hadn't been apparent before. The transformation in Maya's social situation was equally dramatic. The casual dismissal and well-meaning condescension that had characterized her early interactions at the Academy gave way to genuine curiosity and respect. Her classmates began to understand that her struggles with their natural capabilities weren't signs of inferior intelligence, but indications of a different kind of intelligence that operated according to different principles. Tidesinger of the deeper currents, the Aquarian being who had once referred to Maya as the small flesh creature, became one of her closest friends at the Academy. Their species' ability to reshape their liquid form had never required them to think about alternative approaches to physical challenges, but Maya's problem-solving methods opened up new possibilities for how Tidesinger could apply her natural abilities. "You see solutions in spaces that don't exist for my perception," Tidesinger observed during one of their study sessions. "Your thinking creates new territories for problem-solving that I can then explore using my capabilities." Maya had learned to appreciate comments like this rather than feeling diminished by them. "That's what collaboration is supposed to be," she replied. "Different capabilities and perspectives working together to accomplish things that none of us could achieve alone." As Maya's understanding of her role at the Academy evolved, so did her relationship with Umbral. He began revealing more of his nature and the true extent of his species' involvement with human development. The cats that humans had known as pets and companions were actually an advanced species that had chosen to guide human development by providing a form of symbiotic partnership that operated below the level of conscious awareness. "We saw the potential in your species before you achieved any of your technological milestones," Umbral explained during one of their evening conversations. "We recognized that humans had the capacity to develop solutions to problems that other species couldn't even perceive as problems. But we also saw that you needed guidance and protection during your development process." "Protection from what?" Maya asked. "From other species who might not recognize your value until it was too late," Umbral replied, "and from yourselves to some extent. Humans have a tendency toward self-destruction that other species find baffling. We've been working to help your species develop the competence and wisdom necessary to fulfill your potential without destroying yourselves in the process." Maya thought about this as she considered her own experiences at the Academy. "Is that why you waited until now to reveal yourself to me? Because I needed to develop confidence in my own capabilities first?" "Exactly. If I had appeared at the beginning of your time here, you might have become dependent on my abilities rather than developing your own. You needed to experience what it meant to struggle with limitations and overcome them through your own efforts. You needed to understand what human strength actually looks like before you could begin to express it effectively." The final validation of Maya's transformation came during the Academy's annual Innovation Festival, where students from across all cohorts presented original solutions to challenges facing galactic civilization. Maya's project, developed in collaboration with her multi-species team, addressed the infrastructure gaps they had identified in galactic communication networks. Their presentation detailed a comprehensive expansion of galactic communication infrastructure that would make interstellar coordination accessible to developing civilizations. The project included not only the technical specifications for the relay networks Maya had originally proposed, but also economic models for implementation, diplomatic frameworks for cooperation between species with different capabilities, and maintenance protocols that could be handled by civilizations with varying levels of technological development. The panel of judges, representing some of the most advanced beings in galactic civilization, was initially skeptical of an approach that seemed to prioritize accessibility over optimization. But as Maya and her teammates demonstrated the broader implications of their proposal, the value of their human-influenced perspective became undeniable. Current galactic infrastructure assumes that all participating species have reached similar levels of technological development, Maya explained to the panel. This creates barriers to integration for species that might have valuable contributions to make, but haven't followed the same developmental paths as the founding civilizations. Our proposal creates pathways for participation that acknowledge the reality of technological diversity. One of the judges, a collective intelligence called the Synthesis, raised what seemed like an obvious objection. But wouldn't this approach slow down galactic development by accommodating less advanced species? Wouldn't resources be better spent on advancing the most capable civilizations? Maya's response revealed how completely her thinking had evolved during her time at the Academy. Advancement isn't just about developing the most sophisticated possible solutions to known problems. It's also about discovering new problems and new approaches that weren't visible from previous perspectives. Species that develop along different paths don't just need access to advanced technologies. They provide access to different ways of thinking about challenges. Including perspectives from species with different limitations and capabilities doesn't slow down development. It accelerates it by opening up new territories for innovation. The project won the Innovation Festival's highest honor, but more importantly, it marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in how galactic civilization thought about integration and development. Maya's human perspective had revealed that diversity in approaches and capabilities wasn't a problem to be managed, but a resource to be cultivated. As Maya prepared to complete her studies at Andromeda Prime Academy, she realized that her original dreams of galactic exploration had been fulfilled in ways she had never anticipated. She had learned about the universe and her place in it, but that place was very different from what she had imagined when she first arrived at the Academy. She was not destined to be a follower of the advanced species, struggling to catch up to their capabilities and contribute whatever small value her limitations would allow. Instead, she was a pioneer of a different kind of strength, a representative of an approach to problem-solving that had the potential to transform how galactic civilization understood and addressed challenges. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. Maya had learned that this didn't mean eliminating weakness or limitation, but understanding how those apparent disadvantages could become sources of insight and innovation that were impossible to achieve through raw capability alone. Her struggles with the quantum mathematics had taught her to develop alternative approaches that could be understood and implemented by species without direct quantum interface capabilities. Her social challenges had forced her to develop deep understanding of alien psychology and communication methods. Her physical limitations had made her an expert in technological adaptation and resource optimization. Most importantly, her experience of being consistently underestimated and dismissed had taught her to recognize value and potential in places where others saw only problems to be solved or obstacles to be overcome. As Maya packed her belongings for the journey back to human space, Umbrel observed with obvious satisfaction. "You're ready now?" he said. "Ready for what?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer.
"Ready to help your species take its place in galactic civilization," Umbrel replied, not as followers trying to catch up to the advanced species, but as partners bringing capabilities that no other species possesses.
Ready to teach other humans how to transform their limitations into strengths, and how to find opportunities in situations where others see only obstacles. Maya looked around her dormitory room one last time, thinking about everything that had happened during her time at the Academy. When she had arrived, she had been a small human child desperate to prove herself worthy of galactic citizenship. She was leaving as something entirely different, a bridge between human potential and galactic opportunity, equipped with understanding of how different kinds of strength could complement each other. The laughter that had once echoed through the Academy corridors at her expense had been replaced by something far more valuable: recognition that the diversity of approaches and capabilities represented by different species was the key to solving challenges that none of them could address alone. Maya's story at Andromeda Prime Academy was ending, but her larger story as a representative of human potential in galactic civilization was just beginning. She had learned the most important lesson that the Academy could teach: that true strength comes not from possessing overwhelming advantages, but from understanding how to transform any circumstances into opportunities for growth, innovation, and collaboration. As her transport ship departed from the Academy station, Maya watched the swirling lights of the neutron star through her window and knew that she would return someday. But when she came back, it would be as a teacher rather than a student, bringing new humans who were ready to discover their own unique contributions to the magnificent complexity of galactic civilization. The little human who had once been laughed at for her limitations had become something that the galaxy had never seen before, a guide to discovering strength in unexpected places, and a pioneer of solutions that worked not despite resource constraints and apparent disadvantages, but because of them. Her journey had proven that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from advancing beyond limitations, but from learning to see those limitations as the foundation for entirely new kinds of possibility. End of document. Final note from Dr. Sad. HFY. This account, compiled from Academy records, personal testimonies, and the eventual diplomatic archives, represents one of the first documented cases of successful human integration into galactic educational systems. Subject Maya Chen Okafor went on to become the first human admitted to the Galactic Engineering Council and was instrumental in developing the universal infrastructure protocols that now govern technological integration across species boundaries. Her companion, Umbral, was later revealed to be an ambassador from the feline collective, a species that has maintained symbiotic relationships with humanity for over 5,000 Earth years. The implications of this relationship for understanding human development and potential continue to be studied by xenobiologists throughout the galaxy. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.